My name is Michael. I'm 34 years old, and I never thought I'd say this, but the people I trusted the most, my wife and my best friend of 18 years, were secretly betraying me. Imagine waking up every day, thinking your marriage is strong, your friendship's unbreakable, only to find out it's all been a lie. That's exactly what happened to me. And the way I discovered the truth, it still sends chills down my spine. But here's the thing, I didn't explode, I didn't scream. Instead, I decided to play the long game because sometimes the sweetest revenge is patience. If you're watching this right now, drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from. And before I reveal how I turned their betrayal into a shocking twist they never saw coming, hit like and subscribe for more real stories. This is the story of how one dinner changed everything. It started with little things most people would ignore. My wife suddenly guarding her phone like it was a treasure chest. My best friend cancelling plans with weak excuses, only to post pictures later of nights out I was never invited to. At first I told myself I was overthinking. We'd been close for too long, they would never betray me. Right? But then came the nights my wife claimed she was working late, only for me to notice her car mileage didn't match her story. And my best friend? He began showing up at my house when I wasn't there, always with some excuse about dropping something off. One night I walked into the living room and found the two of them sitting a little too close on the couch. Their laughter stopped the second they saw me, and the silence that followed felt heavier than 1,000 words. That was the moment my gut screamed at me. Something wasn't right. And deep down I knew this was only the beginning of something much darker. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying their laughter in my head over and over until it felt like it was burning a hole inside me. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. It was a call from my best friend. Strange, right? At that hour, I didn't answer. Instead, I just watched the screen as his name kept flashing. After a while, he left a voicemail. My hands were shaking as I pressed play. And that's when I heard it, his voice whispering, "Don't worry, she won't find out." My heart froze. She won't find out. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking about me. In that moment, the betrayal wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was real. And the man I trusted like a brother had just proven it with a single sentence. The next morning, I woke up with my chest heavy, like I had swallowed a stone. I couldn't ignore that voicemail, so I went straight to my wife's phone when she was in the shower. My hands were trembling, but I knew I had to look. At first, there was nothing. Just the usual texts, family, work, random friends. But then, buried in the archive folder, I saw his name, my best friend's name. My stomach dropped. I opened the chat. The first message I read was from last night. "Last night was unforgettable and can't wait to see you again." I felt the blood drain from my face. My wife was humming in the shower, carefree, while I stood there holding proof that my whole life was a lie. And then right before my eyes, a new message popped up. From him. 3 words that shattered me completely. "I love you." I closed the chat so fast my hands nearly dropped the phone. My heart was hammering. But when she stepped out of the shower, smiling, humming, wrapping that towel around herself, I forced a smile too. "Coffee?" she asked, like nothing had happened, like she wasn't stabbing me in the back every single day. I nodded, pretending, acting, wearing a mask I didn't even recognize. My own kitchen felt like a stage, and I was playing the role of a husband who didn't know the truth. But inside, my head was spinning. Every laugh, every touch, every kiss we'd shared in the past months suddenly felt fake. Was it all a lie? Then she leaned over and kissed my cheek. Her lips were warm, but I swear in that moment I felt nothing, just emptiness. I made a silent promise to myself, right then. She wouldn't see me break. Not yet. If she wanted to play this game, I'd play too, only better. I knew words alone wouldn't save me. I needed proof, something undeniable. That night while she slept, I quietly slipped out of bed and placed a small hidden camera behind the bookshelf in our living room. My hands were shaking the entire time, but I kept telling myself, this is the only way. The next day I acted normal, kissed her goodbye and left for work. But I never really left. I parked a few blocks away and waited. Hours passed, and just when I started doubting myself, her lover showed up at the door. My stomach twisted as I watched from my phone, the live feed streaming their every move. They laughed, touched, kissed. The betrayal was no longer suspicion. It was fact. But then something I never expected happened. As they talked, she mentioned my name, not with guilt, but with a smile, and the words she spoke next nearly stopped my heart. As I sat in my car staring at the live feed, I felt like my whole world was collapsing. She leaned closer to him, laughing softly, and then she said it. "Don't worry. Michael has no idea. He's too trusting, too blind. By the time he finds out, everything will already be ours. Ours." My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. She wasn't just betraying me with another man. She was planning something bigger, something darker. The man smirked and asked, "And what about the money?" That's when she lowered her voice, looked over her shoulder, and whispered words that made my blood run cold. "Soon it'll all belong to us. He'll never see it coming." I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. This wasn't just cheating. It was a conspiracy. And in that moment I realized I wasn't just fighting for love. I was fighting for my life. I couldn't sleep that night. Her words kept echoing in my head. Soon it'll all belong to us. What did she mean? What were they planning? The next morning I walked into the kitchen, acting normal. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek, and asked if I wanted coffee, like nothing had happened. My stomach turned, but I smiled back. I had to play along. That's when I set my first trap. I told her I'd received a call from the bank about moving a large sum of money into a new account. I pretended to be casual, almost careless, and watched her face closely. Her eyes widened for just a second. She froze, then quickly covered it with a laugh. "Oh, that's interesting," she said. But her voice was too sweet, too rehearsed. Later that night I checked my secret camera again. She picked up her phone, dialed quickly, and whispered, "He mentioned the transfer. It's happening soon. We need to be ready." That was it. Proof she wasn't just unfaithful, she was dangerous. And now, I had her right where I wanted. 2 days later, she told me she was going shopping with friends. But something about the way she avoided my eyes, I knew it was a lie. So, I followed her, quietly. She drove across town and parked at a small cafe, the kind of place nobody would notice. I stayed back, heart pounding, watching as she walked inside. Minutes later, he showed up, my so-called best friend, the man I trusted for 18 years. I clenched my fists as they sat together, leaning in close. I could almost hear their whispers through the glass. Then, she slid a folder across the table. I couldn't see what was inside, but his reaction told me everything. He smiled, smug, satisfied, and put his hand on hers. That's when it hit me. They weren't just planning to betray me emotionally, they were plotting something bigger. My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay calm, because the trap wasn't ready yet. And when it was, their whole world would shatter. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind kept replaying the image of that folder sliding across the table. What was inside? What were they hiding from me? The next morning, I waited until she left for work. My hands trembled as I searched our home office, drawer by drawer, file by file. Nothing. But then in the back of her closet, under a stack of old scarves, I found it. A plain manila folder. My stomach dropped. Inside were documents I never imagined. Bank transfers, forged signatures, even paperwork with my name on it. They weren't just betraying me. They were trying to strip everything I had. My wife, my best friend. They weren't lovers of opportunity, they were partners in crime. I sat there frozen, staring at the proof. Every second my anger grew stronger, but so did my resolve. This wasn't just a betrayal anymore. This was war, and I was going to win. I knew I couldn't confront them yet. If I exploded now, they'd deny everything. I needed them to bury themselves in their own lies. So I turned my phone into my weapon. Every time my wife stepped out for a call, I quietly hit record. Whenever my best friend dropped by, I left my phone on the table, screen off, mic on. At first, it was just small whispers. Little comments that didn't mean much on their own, but then, one night I caught something that made my blood run cold, my wife's voice, soft but clear. As soon as the papers are signed, he'll have nothing left. And then his voice followed, calm, confident. Good, that's when we disappear. My hands shook as I listened, rage building with every word. They weren't just betraying me, and they were planning to erase me, but they had no idea. I was already one step ahead, and their every word was now my evidence. I wanted to scream at them, to throw the truth in their faces, but I didn't. Instead, I smiled. I laughed at their jokes. I played the fool. Every morning I kissed my wife goodbye as if nothing had changed. Every evening, when my best friend dropped by, I poured him a drink like always. They thought I was blind, they thought I was weak, but inside I was sharpening my revenge like a knife. I learned to control every twitch of my face, every glance of my eyes, because if they even suspected what I knew, all of this would collapse. So I wore the mask. Calm, loyal husband, trusting best friend, but underneath, I was watching, waiting, recording. And the longer they played their little game, the deeper they walked into the trap I was building for them. One evening, while she was in the shower, I sat at her laptop. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to keep going. Emails, bank statements, hidden folders, and there it was, transfers. Thousands of dollars moved from our joint account to an account I didn't recognize. The name on it, my best friend's. I felt my stomach twist. It wasn't just betrayal of love. It was betrayal of trust, money, and everything I had worked for. She had been funding him. Our vacations, our savings, the future I thought we were building together, all being siphoned into his pockets. At that moment I realized this wasn't just an affair. This was theft, and that's when I decided my revenge wouldn't just be personal, it would destroy everything they thought they were gaining from me. I didn't confront them right away. No, that would have been too easy for them. Instead, I stayed calm, almost too calm. I laughed at her jokes, kissed her goodnight, and pretended to be the same old husband. But inside, I was plotting. I opened a secret bank account, moved small amounts of money out of our savings, bit by bit, so she wouldn't notice. I started documenting everything, screenshots, receipts, even photos of her slipping away with him. Every piece of proof became another weapon. I wasn't going to explode in anger. I was going to let them both think they were winning. The truth is, silence can be the most dangerous weapon, because while they were busy betraying me, I was already building the trap that would end them both. I knew I couldn't let her suspect a thing, so I started acting sweeter than ever. I brought her flowers, cooked her dinner, even suggested we take a weekend trip, just the two of us. Her eyes lit up, and I could almost see the guilt flicker in her face, but she quickly covered it with a smile. Meanwhile, I was using every romantic gesture as a smokescreen. The dinner I cooked, I used it as an excuse to check her phone while she showered. The weekend trip, that was just a setup to see if her lover would panic when she went missing for 2 days. She thought I was falling deeper in love. But the truth? I was just pulling her deeper into my web. The disguise was working perfectly. She had no idea that every kiss, every smile was hiding the storm that was about to destroy her world. Her perfect act was starting to slip, and I noticed every detail. One night while we were having dinner, her phone buzzed on the table. She grabbed it so quickly you'd think it was on fire. I caught the panic in her eyes, just for a second, but it was enough. Another time she came home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine. She claimed she brushed past someone at the store, but I knew better. The lies were getting sloppy, and the cracks were spreading wide open. I stayed calm, pretending I believed every word. Inside, though, I was sharpening my plan. The more she stumbled, the closer I was to striking. And in that moment, I realized something chilling. She wasn't just careless. She was confident, too confident. Almost like she thought I would never find out. I had played the fool long enough. It was time to turn the tables. I told her I wanted to celebrate our marriage, just the two of us, no distractions. She smiled, but I saw the flicker of guilt hiding behind it. While she thought I was planning a romantic night, I was setting the stage for her downfall. I booked a fancy restaurant, the kind she loved showing off at, but what she didn't know was that I invited one more guest, her so-called secret lover. I arranged it so they'd both arrive, unaware of each other, thinking they were meeting me. Every detail was ready. The champagne, the table, the final act. That night wasn't going to be about love. It was going to be about truth. And for the first time in weeks, I felt in control again. The night of the dinner, my heart pounded in my chest like a war drum. I arrived early, sitting at the table with 2 extra seats waiting. The restaurant buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, but to me it felt like the calm before a storm. First, she walked in, dressed to kill, her smile sweet but her eyes nervous. She leaned down, kissed my cheek and whispered, "This feels special." She had no idea how special it really was. Minutes later, he walked in. The moment his eyes met mine, the color drained from his face. He froze, realizing too late that he'd walked straight into my trap. I kept my composure, forcing a smile, my hands gripping the fork so tight my knuckles turned white. The stage was set. The lies were about to collide, and neither of them knew how explosive it would get. We sat there, 3 actors in a play none of us wanted to perform. I poured the wine, my hands steady even though my chest burned with rage. She chatted nervously about work, her voice too high, too rehearsed. He kept his eyes on the table, swirling his glass like it held the answers. I asked casual questions, innocent on the surface, deadly underneath. "So, how was your week? Busy with late nights?" Her smile faltered, just a flicker, but I caught it. He shifted uncomfortably, coughing into his napkin. The waiter brought appetizers, but the air at that table was heavier than stone. My wife laughed a little too loudly, as if she could drown the silence. He barely touched his food, his hand shaking every time he reached for his drink. The cracks were forming. The perfect picture they thought they painted was starting to shatter, and I was the one holding the hammer. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the 2 of them like puzzle pieces that no longer fit. My wife kept forcing smiles, but her eyes darted between me and him like she was trapped in a cage. Finally, I set down my fork, the sound sharp against the plate. The table fell silent. I looked at her first. "Tell me," I said calmly, "how long have you been lying to me?" Her face drained of color. She stammered, shook her head, whispered, "What do you mean?" Then I turned to him. "And did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I'd never notice my wife sneaking off with you?" The restaurant's chatter faded into the background. It was just us caught in the heat of truth. My voice stayed calm, almost too calm, and that made it worse. The masks were slipping. The performance was over, and neither of them had a script for what came next. The waiter returned, setting down the final course, a small covered dish right in front of me. My wife looked relieved, as if food could somehow distract from the storm at this table. Her lover leaned back smug, like he still believed he had the upper hand. I slowly lifted the lid, and instead of food, inside was a thick envelope. Their smiles froze. I slid it across the table. "Go ahead," I said. "Open it." My wife's hands trembled as she pulled out the photos. Her car parked outside his apartment, receipts from hotels, even the text messages I'd printed out. Her face turned pale, her lips parted, but no words came out. Then I looked at him. "That's just the start. You should probably explain to your wife why you're here tonight." The entire table went cold. Their little secret wasn't theirs anymore, and they finally realized I'd been planning this moment all along. And that's how it ended, at least for them. But let me ask you this, if you were in my shoes, would you have exposed them like I did, or walked away in silence? Think carefully, because one choice destroys trust forever, and the other leaves you haunted by unanswered questions. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to know. What would you have done?